Welcome back to
Ami's house.
Kicking off the new year strong. 2025 is it's ringing interest. It's weird to say that more than other years.
I was trying to explain to someone, if you would have told me it was 2026, I would have been like, all right. I don't have a relationship with years anymore, you know?
Right. This one just, I think there's something about the brand of 2024, maybe because it was an election year, that is so, more than other years, so sticky to me.
I don't feel that way, but I hear you. In TV, everyone's been saying survive till 25 for a long time.
Okay.
So 2025 has had a place in my mind for a minute.
Interesting.
I think it's a good solid quarter century, you know?
Right. How do you feel going in? It seems to be that the internet is full of positivity on the heels of like the business parts of the internet, the chamaths. I see like that whole like all in sphere, all talking about how exciting like the future and bright the future looks, you know.
Well, for them it is. David Sachs, the host, is like head of crypto. I think Trump appointed him like the crypto czar of the country. So,
right. So
the hundreds of millions of dollars he has invested in crypto, I'm sure are happy about that. Yeah. I mean, well, and also Dana White got a board seat on Meta, which I imagine.
Oh,
you know Dana White, the head of the UFC and close.
Yeah, what are you talking about? What are you talking about with Dana White? What are you saying? John Jones is not. I mean, it's not great, but I can't do it. He's so imitatable. There is a way to crack it, but I'm surprised no one's done it yet. But he's like, John Jones is a monster. John Jones is the greatest fighter. I can't do it. I'm botching it.
I don't know what he sounds like well enough to even to judge.
He has this like.
It's a good face. You got the face.
John Jones is one of the greatest. This guy will rip you apart. He's one of the toughest human beings on the planet. No, it's not there. It's not.
His
there.
eyes like disappear when he's talking.
But what about him? He's appointed an official position.
He got a seat on the board of Meta, which we'll talk about Zuckerberg in a second. But I imagine that was Meta saying, "Oh boy, we need an in at the White House. Let's give Dana White a seat on the board, and his job now is to be our line to Trump." That has to be what it was. The same way, you know. Yeah, it's good. It's good for these people.
So let's get to the hot topics with regard to Meta and Mark Zuckerberg. You sent me a video today, which I was seeing circulating before actually watching it. So you know when you like retroactively pick up on something that's trending, but you don't know what it is on Twitter. You're like, what is everybody sharing about Zuckerberg for? What's happening? And then you were the like clarifier by sending me this video, and I'm like, oh, that's what this whole thing has been about. So set it up. What did Mark Zuckerberg say in a statement today?
First of all, he looks freaking amazing. He looks tan. He's got that like jujitsu body now, you know, like kind of like thick.
He's very into MMA.
He's got that good hair. He's got that $1 billion hair.
He still doesn't look human though. Act human.
Yeah. There's something very off-putting about him still.
Off-putting. It's like it doesn't match with the human frequency. It's clearly like a weird social spectrum-y thing where you're like,
yes,
I know you've been like coached on how to talk,
right,
to appeal to the human race,
right. So that's what this video felt like. He outlined 6 points, 6 changes Meta, aka Facebook, is making to their content moderation policy. Right. They're basically trying to make themselves feel a little bit more like X or Twitter. And those 6 points are, I'll walk you through them really quickly.
Yeah.
Let's see. I have them here. All right. So number 1 is they are replacing fact checkers with community notes, just like Twitter does. So no more fact checking. But that's confusing. I'll tell you in a second why. Simplify our content policies and remove restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are out of touch with mainstream discourse.
Wow.
Number 3, change how we enforce our policy. So basically, like, stop punishing people so severely. Number 4, putting back what they call civic content, which is politics.
Wow.
Number 5 is, and this is the most interesting one, their trust and safety and content moderation team, which I thought they were getting rid of, but I guess they still have it. They are no longer going to be based in California, but be based in Texas, which he explains, well, now maybe people won't think there's biased.
Right.
And number 6 is work with Trump to push back against foreign governments going after American companies to censor more.
Wow. Can I, first of all,
first impressions.
Yeah, okay, I got to react to this a little bit. Certain civic content, because other civic content was allowed.
Right.
So I have to say, like, overall, to summarize what you said, like, and the way it's been described, Instagram, Facebook, Meta are moving towards free speech more than controlled, moderated speech as before. My first reaction is like, what an astonishing admission of what it's been. Because to say it was all those things beforehand, as he just clearly admitted, you'd be gaslit into thinking, no, you're crazy. We are open. Like, it's not like they didn't pretend they were all the things they want to be beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
like this isn't the fact that he's saying we're making a change without acknowledging that it's not like we were outwardly explicitly the other way before when they obviously were, and we all could see it. It reminds me of like someone getting up and saying, I don't think we should close schools when COVID comes back. I've decided myself that it's a bad idea. I've come to this realization. There's a bit of that in there where it's like, you're not saying the quiet part out loud. Like there's no apology. There's no sense of like humility and like regret and remorse for like the fact that this platform has been this censorious, controlled, in cahoots with the left, anti-free speech platform for so long.
Right. So, and put another way, they're kind of saying like, just like we also got swept up in it, as opposed to like, we were the ones that led the charge. We're the most powerful company in the world. Yeah. Without our input, you would never have gotten swept up in this in the first place. They're like, yep, we all kind of messed up, didn't we?
Yeah. So it's what's unsaid, and I can't let that slide. Like, what I'll say is like, I like that it's going this way, but I can't respect him and that choice, what's motivating him, because it's not brave to make that move now. It's brave to do it when Elon bought Twitter and bet that hopefully the culture would move that way and said, we're going to commit to free speech as a principle. And you may disagree on like my stances or positions on Elon Musk. And he actually did something recently on Twitter that was just like, oh boy, but we'll talk about that too. But at least in his time when he was doing it, he was like taking a stance on principle from my perspective. And not knowing where the culture and politics were going to go, and took a huge public hit for it, fell out of favor with a lot of the mainstream, was pushed to the corner, and decided to go red pill and support Trump. And that is what I think Facebook is claiming to try to do now. But It's like he's even saying now that the culture seems to be okay with it and is going to like us for it, we'll do the right thing.
Well, he was saying it's even worse than that, because he's saying we got swept up in the culture in 2016, and now we're going to get swept up again in what's going on in 2024. Like, we don't really have a compass. Whichever way you guys tell us to do it, we'll just do it.
It's like
you know what I'm saying? Like, X has been successful, so we'll do that now. But it's not because we're making a bold choice here.
Yeah, when you criticize the left, it's often like, look, you're doing the wrong thing, even if you're doing the wrong thing, even if it's for the right reasons. And in this case, you're doing the right thing, but it's for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
The left, it's like you're doing the wrong thing for the right reasons, possibly. And in this case, you're doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. Like you want to go along with it now, and under the guise of I've learned the air, I've seen the light, and I can appreciate that his politics have clearly changed. But I would respect more a fully honest account of that. Like, not we all were swept up in it. Everyone, I I was. We were, or like come out criticizing what's what. I'm all for like, I don't want to like hold someone to their same positions and whatever policies for their whole life if they actually have a genuine change, but don't try to coat it and sugarcoat it in this whole like, clearly like in the, the election and what's been going on, like it's like you said, it's worse. It's like, clearly this is what you people want now. So we're going to go there.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. If you've made it this far, we want to let you know that Ami's House is now on Patreon. We love doing extra content, bonus footage with every episode. The best way to support us is to head on over to Patreon, become a guest, and support the show for $5 a month.
If you like watching Ami cut me off, Patreon is
Patreon.com/Ami's House for bonus content. Thanks so much for your support and become a guest.
And it's a market decision, not a principled decision, being presented as a principled decision.
My first impression was any bit of credibility you had left, you just lost. Like you can't even stand by your old decisions. Like, I'm just like, this is such a bad look. Like you get so much coaching and you still look so awful here. So that's all the very negative light to see it in. There is a positive light to see it in, which I felt it's kind of a watershed moment for taking him in his word, which is, listen, a lot of us went through a communal experience of buying into an ideology that we want to now backtrack on. Like maybe we experienced it differently because I'm the head of Meta and you're not, but as a culture, we are sort of, as a generation, taking a step back together, which is pretty amazing and cool and interesting to watch in real time.
It's an interesting observation, but the fact is that they were so complicit in it, and to simply say, like, we've all clearly moved. It's like, no. Like you said, we were a certain way. You were trying to force us to move a different way. And now you're recognizing that you were wrong. Say that, and I'll respect you.
Right. No, so throwing respect out the window. That's not even coming.
No, observationally, it's pretty amazing. It's woke is broke. The bubble has burst. Everybody recognizing it. Can you imagine any Silicon Valley ever CEO saying, and I look forward to working with Trump?
When he invited the CEOs in 2016 to the White House, it was hugely controversial. I think that Tim Cook showed up. I think some of them didn't show up, even just to meet him and shake his hand.
Yeah.
And it swung so far the other way.
Yeah.
But it's pretty delightful. I mean, I can't imagine if Kamala had won. I can't imagine this happening.
Yeah, it's an elections has consequences moment, and also just the sheer admission of the fact that it is now valid and true and affirmed that they were in fact repressing civic content. They were like flip it in reverse. Everything he said in its negative. What does that mean? It means they were squashing content they didn't agree with, opinions they didn't agree with, censoring free. I want to say free speech and use that word too loosely, but free speech and ideas they didn't like were not being shown. All that shadow banning stuff that people were talking about, algorithmic shadow banning, whatever, based on filtering certain content and fact checkers, it's all true. That's what they were doing. And people weren't imagining these things. And it wasn't some right-wing conspiracy and talking about COVID origins and things like that. Or making jokes and being punished for it, like if you didn't fall in the right favor of the right opinion slot, like opinion narrative. That's what they were doing, and he just admitted all that. And I would have, if he had the integrity a little more or honesty, he would have admitted that in a much more explicit way, as opposed to this reverse engineer. I have to infer from everything you just said that is telling us what you actually were beforehand.
Yeah,
by saying we're making a change.
And I saw some tweets from like people on the left also, and he didn't please them either with that speech. So he's kind of in the wilderness now. He's done. He's done. His career's over.
He's not. He's clearly. I mean, I respect the skill and the talent and whatnot, but his ability to communicate and emote in an authentic way is a handicap for him. where like he can't seem to find his way out of those things, even in a carefully crafted video like this. Remember that scene in the courtroom where they were like, "Can you apologize to the families?" And the poor guy has to get up and look at all these screaming parents yelling at him. Did you ever see that clip?
No.
Yeah,
He
he testified before Congress, and he's like, "Will you apologize to the parents in this room whose kids like committed suicide because of your platform and the harm it's caused?" Yes. And he like gets up, like, and he's like sipping water nervously. You know,
your girl Kara Swisher tells a story. I think his first big interview in like 2008 or something, not 2008, like 2006 or something. She had him on stage at I think it was her first like Recode conference. She does these big tech conferences, and she basically got him to kind of like cry.
Oh boy!
And she had a moment where she was like, "Oh, like what am I doing to this 21-year-old kid?"
Oh boy!
And she kind of like let him take a break. He was sweating so much. She called a break or something and let him regroup and like come back and like kind of save himself. But she was like, "Oh God, like I thought I was gonna like own him, and I just feel so bad for him. I have to I have to go easy on him." Yeah, that was a long time ago, but he's still got his issues.
Yeah. It's interesting. Do you follow what's been going on in Canada? Justin Trudeau.
So I saw Trudeau. What happened? I know he stepped down.
He's going to lose. Like, I don't know Canadian politics, but now he's like the head of the Liberal Party. It's a multi-party system, I believe. And so the parties are the things that are in charge, and he's the prime minister, head of the party. So right now it's the Liberal Party, which with him as the head. I think I'm getting that right. Just like in Israel, where they have multi-party systems. So his popularity has gone down so much in the country, and he's had such a disastrous term in Canada, where their inflation's through the roof, their mortgages are in terrible places. Real income and wealth has just declined so rapidly in Canada that he's gone down. So before actually being up for the election or whatever's coming, he's resigning, so they could choose somebody else to run for the party. But he's going to hopefully lose to this guy Pierre, who's amazing.
Is he right? I saw this guy. I go on Twitter now more often than I'd like to, and I saw a clip where he's like super pro-Israel.
Pierre is awesome. He's like. He's been challenging.
How do you know who he is?
Because I go on Twitter more than you know. No,
okay.
but you can't be a Jordan Peterson impersonator and not know who Pierre and Trudeau are in Canada. Pierre is like the main, I think, conservative or whatever. I don't know which party exactly, but I think it's conservative opposition to Trudeau. And in these multi-party systems like the UK and stuff, they often will have like town hall question time things where you challenge the prime minister directly. I don't know if you've seen that in like British Parliament and in Canadian Parliament.
And they fight it. They get
Pierre
rowdy.
is one of his main. Will the prime minister admit as to why and confess why he spent $80,000 this weekend on a private yacht vacation while boasting to all of us and lecturing us on climate waste, and all of these things. And like he has his whole party behind him, and this guy's just been calling him out and saying how like Canada's basically been run by children with woke fantasies, implementing policies of DEI and all the worst ideas of wokeness. Trudeau was in a Q&A years ago where somebody said, I prefer all, standing up for all of mankind. And Trudeau responded, we prefer saying people kind. And everybody clapped. He like outwoked a woke questioner. And like, he's been this narcissistic, self-congratulatory person who's, and Trudeau did some of the most horrible things, like in COVID during the Canadian trucker protests, where they were like, he was trying to mandate vaccines for these truckers. They protested, and he implemented the Emergency Powers Act in Canada and froze their bank accounts.
Right.
And then claimed they were all Nazis. All the low-hanging, like, worst kind of arguments, and said they were all Nazis. And then, of course, supported all the disruptive, like, BLM rights to protest all over, wherever they may be. But when it was the opposite against vaccine mandates for these truckers, he froze their bank accounts. Like, really taking unprecedented measures in Canada, turned it into a totalitarian state, especially during COVID. The things that they did were just insane. Anyway, people hate him, and he resigned.
It's cool to me that as a generation, we've sort of now all experienced kind of like bad ideas rising and
their consequences
and seeing the consequences and seeing them fade away.
Right.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
You know, like
as far as life goes.
In our lifetime, yeah, we've seen that, you know?
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you can compare it to. Like, I don't know. I'm not even sure what I can compare it to, but like something like cigarettes in the 50s and 60s, you know, then as a generation experiencing like, oh yeah, if you're a woman, my mom smoked while she was pregnant, but my daughter would never ever do that.
Right.
Like that sort of thing. Like that was a bad idea. And now we're aware that really bad ideas can become really popular, but it doesn't mean they're good ideas.
Yeah. The problem with like politics is they come in circles. I mean, you could say that after the communist revolutions and socialist revolutions of the 20th century, one would think that all of these ideas, after the millions of people who were killed in their name from famines and mismanagement and bad government policy, we would learn from that. And now you see the Occupy Wall Street people who brought it on again, and now it's back to like realizing it was a bad idea.
It's very different reading it in a textbook and going through it yourself. I mean, you see it with anti-Semitism also. Everyone knows the Holocaust was bad, but it's not stopping a lot of young people from dabbling in it, you know?
You're saying that, like, not that it won't happen again, but you have to live through these things rather than read about them to really understand. And we've gotten a tiny, not to compare it to the atrocities of the 20th century and what people had to live through, but to at least get a taste of like what it could be and how, also how like, you know, thank God it wasn't worse, but you see, we got a glimpse of why the bad things of the past did happen. Even if this wasn't as bad as it could be. Like how a society can turn on itself, how people can turn on their fellow citizens, how fast during COVID can people start to snitch. You start to realize, oh, that's why socialists, behind the Iron Curtain, they were able to rule because people were telling on their neighbors, even if they didn't believe it was real. Like that's
exactly.
And it's nice to be coming out of that, it seems, back to common sense rather quickly.
And I suppose maybe because of the internet now, those ideas might not have as long of a lifespan as they did before. So it's possible without YouTube or whatever, we'd be living through like 10, 20, 30 more years of that stuff before coming out of it. But these cycles may be much quicker now because the bad ideas get exposed more quickly.
Like imagine if Meta was state-run, right? And didn't allow for other podcasts to speak and locked up people. So we have such access to information now that it's harder to bullshit. In a way, there's more bullshit, but in a way, it's also easier to detect it. You know, you get more of everything in a way. So
and not to say that whatever's going on with the right and Trump is like perfect and the answer, and it doesn't have its own problems, which leads us into what's going on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, on the Trump thing itself, first of all, did you see what he's been like saying in these press conferences about taking Greenland? We need Greenland, and we're going to call it. We're going to call it the Gulf of America. It's a great name, a nice ring to it. Nice ring. We need Greenland, Michael. We need Greenland.
What's going on with it? Someone I saw tweet we're going to rename it Red, White, and Blue Land,
and maybe making Canada the 51st state. I think what's happening is Trump. I think it's Trump being like, I won, bitches, and now I'm gonna just be me. Like he can say that. What's the consequence? Nothing. Like the alternative.
Apparently, he's been obsessed with Greenland for a long time.
Yeah. I don't know.
Do you have any idea what it's about?
National security, Russia related, having a geographic strategic advantage.
It's not like oil or something.
I don't think it's oil. I think we have a lot of natural resources here that he wants to unleash American energy. But I don't know exactly. I would be making it up to tell you I did. He had this whole thing about Canada. He's like, I would think about making it a state. I mean, what do we get? What do we get from Canada when it's not being our state? What do we get? Nothing. What do we get from you? I asked them. I met with Governor Trudeau, as I like to call him, Governor Trudeau, whatever that means. Like, I met with him and I said, what would you do if you didn't have our financial support and military support? He said they would. He didn't know how to answer. They would fizzle away. So I said, then what do we need you besides we're nice neighbors, but we can't be nice for so long. he was just like, we're nice to our neighbors, but maybe they should just be a 51st state and we can get something for it. But now we're at a point in the culture where people are like, hey, maybe, yeah. Like everyone's like,
hear him out.
Yeah, maybe. But then you actually ask yourself, like, that's like Trump's like power. He puts these thoughts that are so never considered into the conversation, and people go, "What? Why isn't Canada?" I mean, think about it. Canada is a great country, great people. They're just like us. It's right here. A lot of natural resources. We don't need their lumber. We got lumber. We don't need their cars. We have. I'd rather make them in Detroit. Now, I'm not really like dabbling with this, but I'm thinking: is that a real thought? Is that a real serious thing? Do people? Has that ever? I mean. It's funny because he's the only one who could ever say such a thing like that.
Yeah.
For better or worse. But back to Twitter, the Twitter space that you brought up. I find it interesting that in a post, like overall right of center victory in the culture, how it seems like everything's been kind of a little more red pilled. Trump wins. And now like everyone can kind of celebrate in one faction. What starts to happen almost immediately, now that the sort of bigger behemoth enemy has been defeated, which is sort of the left and the woke left and that whole narrative, now you're seeing the right of center thing, almost this immediate infighting taking place, where it's sort of like, I see certain players who are like, okay, we won. Now it's time to clean house on our side. You got to go. You got to go. You got to go. And I'll be specific, but it's more like the splitting between like those who are a little more principle based versus those who were more nativist and white identitarian that was in the party a little bit, that was on the ascent in the last years of Biden and post like October 7th. You're starting to see people drawing a little more distinctions. It came up in the conversation around the H1, what is it? The H2
H1B visas.
Yeah, the visas
about like highly skilled workers,
foreign workers
coming to America.
Right. And like I started seeing almost immediately.
Right?
Yeah. I started seeing almost immediately like Michaela Peterson talking about, like she had this tweet like right off the bat that was why the woke right pretend it was illegal immigration? Why did the woke right pretend it was illegal immigration they were concerned about when it turned out it was immigration in general? At least be honest about it. If there's assimilation into the culture and legal immigration, what's the problem other than skin color? In other words, guys, let's remember the whole time we've been saying we're against illegal immigration, but we're not against immigration. Like it depends who's coming in and what skills are being brought. Like who cares? What's your problem? And then all these other Trumpies who were like, no, who were like nativists, who want like sort of the white identitarian uglier parts of that Trump support base are like yelling and screaming about immigration. But then I saw like Tim Pool who responded to her saying maybe we need to invest in American workers and not mass import visa non-U.S. workers, as it will dilute and damage our culture. Immigration is fine, but not at the expense of those who already live here if we do not invest in our citizens. So that's like a fair, he goes, this is not woke right. Woke right is a cringe nonsense term.
Which side is Tim Pool on? Where does he land? Is he anywhere near Nick Fuentes?
No. Then he goes, the Jews run the world people are so cringe. Holy shit. Calling out Jake Shields.
That's nice.
He says the guy who just sold his entire media company to Jews. That's what Jake Shields responds to. Tim is sort of like sympathetic to the grievances of people we may find distasteful, but he's not about their bad views. You know what I mean? He kind of understands maybe the disenfranchised feeling of some of those people who blame Jews. He said, guys, it's not Jews. Like, so he's more of that, like, kind of plays adjacent to it, but he doesn't subscribe to those views, but he tries to, like, speak with a little bit of sympathy. So he's, like, challenging Michaela Peterson on that. And then I just start seeing, like, the woke right term coming up where it's like, okay, we thought the left-wingers were just these tribal DEI, want special privileges for affirmative action, minorities, and we're anti-white. And now we're seeing, okay, it's you guys who are like pro-white over everything else, or pro like a certain tribe that's being deemed sort of this, that's an identity politics of its own called woke rightness. Woke right.
Wait, so woke right are the nativists? I would have thought woke right is like, they would call Michaela, like, don't tell us how to speak. Don't tell us. don't police our speech, but that's not what it is.
It's hard to define what woke right means because by definition, almost it's a contradiction in terms. Woke means left, right? When you think of that. And it's being debated as we speak about people throwing that term around. Like Tim Pool says, that's a nonsense term. What are you talking about? But a lot of people are accusing like Dave Smith of being, and these other people in that space who are like anti-Israel and criticizing like the American government, foreign policy, isolationists who are like, America's terrorists too. But they're not left wingers. They're like libertarians, but there's a wokeness there about like the marginalized group is sort of the American. This isn't necessarily what Dave Smith says because he rejects the term entirely, but it's being thrown at him, and he's throwing it at Zionists who are woke right because Zionists are tribal on Israel. And
they need a different term.
It isn't really working, but they're trying to. Yeah. It's really a provocative term more than anything else because it's trying to call those who hate the left a form of leftism. You know. In the sense that no one's thinking on principle here; they're thinking on tribal. Like people on the right are.
Oh, I like that. I like that. The discrepancy,
distinction.
Not the distinction.
Distinction. Where it stems from is the fact that there are people on the right who are so afraid to sound left that when they see real racism, they won't call it out or real anti-Semitism. Dave Smith will look at Jake Shields' Twitter feed, calling out. Talking about disgusting Jews. Jews are the rot of the world. They're the reason behind all people's problems. And Dave will go, listen, so what? He's critical of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Or like just turning a blind eye to it. Like, look, I don't like that stuff. But like, all right, so he's just, he's got some issues with Israel. Or not, he doesn't defend the arguments, but he pretends they're just not being said or just turns a deaf ear and a blind eye to them. And I'm like, are you afraid of sounding like the people who throw around the term racism too loosely? I agree. We shouldn't do that. But that doesn't mean when you do see it, you don't just like, it's easy enough to say, well, that is, because then you lose a little credibility if you can. But I think there's people on the right who don't want to sound anything like the ADL or the BLM folks who threw around racism or anti-Semitism where it didn't exist. And that's what woke right seems to be to me, where you're like, I need to stick to this tribe of being anti-left and free speech absolute. We're to the point where I make no judgment on speech. That's weird.
I'm still pretty confused about it.
About what the term means?
Yeah.
It's a provocative term.
I think you did a good job, but it's not a natural, it's not an organic understanding. I think they need a better nickname.
But you understand the profile of those it's being hurled against. In other words, I'm calling you something that you're so afraid of sounding like the left that you like lose your sense of critical judgment and thinking. And that's a form of wokeness where you're not using critical ideas and free thinking to judge and principles to judge things. You're using a sense of, I don't want to sound like a leftist. I am not a leftist. I am for free speech. That's my tribal identity. And that's another piece of identity politics.
Principled people on the right who are calling out people in their own party for thinking not from principles, but from
tribalism,
culture, something else. Yeah.
From their identity being, I'm against the left. And what does the left do? They cry racism and sexism and homophobia, transphobia. So when I see behavior that reeks of that, I'm not going to call it out because I don't want to sound like them. So it's a little reactionary. And ironically, that's what they call us Zionists, because we see critical of Israel stuff and we have a reaction to that. And I think there's good reason, because like not all two things that seem the same are the same. In some cases, I think it is really anti-Semitic. In other cases, it may not be. But I think, the funny thing is when the two sides hurl it at each other, they're both calling each other the same thing. And it's meant as an insult more than a refined label.
But bigger picture, the right is cannibalizing itself a bit.
You could say
election win,
cleansing itself, cannibalizing itself, or like saying, okay, now we all kind of banded together in a sense for a common cause, and now we're gonna Alex Jones went on a rant on his show saying, I just don't understand these people who are just like they're just obsessed with Jews. Like, guys, I've spoken about some Jews. I've spoken about some people. There's good Jews. There's bad Jews. There's a lot of different kinds of Jews. I want to talk about other things. I want to talk about immigration. I want to talk about this. There are no Jews trying to shut me down. There's no Jewish conspiracy trying to censor my voice. It's never been the case. But like, you're obsessed with Jews. You have one answer for everything. Jews, 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 Jews. Talking about like Jake Shields and Jackson Hinkle. All like there's some serious anti-Semites on Twitter building followings.
Yeah.
And like, and Dave Smith is tweeting about like, hey, I'll talk to all those people. Like, I'll be a cool Jew, and then I won't be the Jew they're talking about.
Right.
It's a weird strategy, and part of me understands it. It's like that guy who will, Daryl Davis, move white supremacists by like becoming friends with them and then realizing, oh, but it's almost like this admission. You're giving them too much credibility to say you have a point about Jews. I'm one of the good ones. It's like, it's weird.
I mean, we have a long history of Jews who do that throughout our history. I don't think it's anything new.
But anyway, Alex Jones getting up and saying that they all used to love Alex Jones, these people. You know, these were the biggest fans of Alex Jones. He was their champion, and he's disavowing them. Like they're saying, and they're getting stripped of their verification on Twitter. That's what I'm saying. Like,
yes. So how does what's Elon's stance on all this?
So all of them are talking about how in the post-election season right now that we're in, like the worst racists and actual anti-Semites are getting stripped of verification or their accounts banned or things like that. This guy Myron Gaines of like Fresh and Fit. Do you know what Fresh and Fit is? Have you seen that?
No.
And so other right wingers,
the world you're in.
No, if I showed you clips of this podcast, you might have seen it. It's like the Andrew Tate.
You've explained this before.
Christian Tate, Myron Gaines, Dan Bilzerian world of basically like alpha male, women hating, like, you know, calling everyone a low T soy beta, anti-feminist, and like, but they're all like single, living with their siblings,
right?
And they have no families, and they're not very manly, if you ask me, in that way. But they claim to be like, you know, you're never going to get a high profile man because blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you guys are all single,
right?
But they also are terribly racist in a post like October 7th world. Like all that like fun macho game stuff turned into a lot of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel stuff. Mm-hmm. And basically a lot of like conservatives are like, yeah, well, you're getting banned, cry me a river. You're getting stripped of your verification, cry me a river. Congratulations. Elon Musk gave you free speech and you decided to just drop N-bombs on Twitter and talk about kikes and say the worst things about Jews and minorities. You decided to test it and be as racist as you can. And that they're not going to be okay with. They're going to be okay with free speech in the Overton window of like acceptable like discourse. But they all decided to become just unapologetically racist. And now they're complaining.
How do you square that though with Elon's insistence on free speech? Is it why would they get banned or stripped of their verification? It is free speech.
Because Elon, I mean, I would say that Elon's whole thing was to try to return a culture of free speech to Twitter and at least have a space where people can have conversations. That it's not the government that doesn't, like, you know, none of these people I think should be arrested for saying the things that they're saying. But I think Twitter, as a private company, does reserve the right to say, we have certain guidelines of things you can say or can't say about, you know, like there is such a thing as a threatening comment or a really hateful comment that has no constructive value at all. If you get up there and just say, like, I hate Jews, I hate black people, like, and are just a racist, like, Twitter reserves the right to say, like, this is not acceptable on our platform.
I'm surprised to hear you say that, because aren't you the one who says like it's much better to have that stuff open and for everyone to see than to try to hide it or kick them off onto their own platform so they can just talk to each other? I mean, like, how do you draw that line between like we do have guidelines, but what are these? These are all arbitrary guidelines, aren't they? You trust Elon to run that ship, but I mean, you can see the problem there, right?
A little bit, except for the fact that it goes both ways. Free speech applies to these people and to Elon. If it's a private company, they can do what they want. So Elon has the right to say, we draw certain, I don't know if it's Elon or just Twitter's, but whoever's making these decisions. And again, if we're talking about free speech, that's the government censoring speech. If the government were to work with Twitter to shut down speech the government didn't like or criticism of the government, that's a violation. If it wanted to arrest or press charges against any of these people, that would be a problem. But to have a standard of a free speech culture doesn't mean you have no standards at all. Is it better to...
What would Greg Lukianoff say?
What would he say? It's a good question. What did he say in our conversation? I'm sure I asked him about the limits of it.
He said he's
not an absolutist. He said he's
not.
Absolute.
I think he's a radical. Oh man, we made a good short about it that nobody watched. I think he said like anything short of a direct threat of violence should be allowed.
Should be allowed. Should be allowed where?
Even harassment is fine.
Should be allowed where?
Right. No. So of course Twitter is under no obligation to allow it on their platform. But how's that any different than what Jack was doing at Twitter? Like, you know, he had his own guidelines and he had his own standards, and now Elon has his own guidelines and his own standards, which is what his critics have been saying from the beginning. Which is,
I get it. I guess it's more like, there are things that everyone can universally agree are just, it's like debating affirmative action is not racist, but there's
an etiquette. There's an American etiquette.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily follow principles. There's just an etiquette of what we say and what we don't say, which I think is great. Mm-hmm. But I'm just surprised to hear you think it's great, given everything you've argued before.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
right now,
I was looking for some tweets to give an example of something. I'm like, well, this is what he did.
I'm not saying I want Jake Shields on Twitter. I would like him to be kicked off. Mm-hmm. But I've never been like so radical free speech. Like I didn't have such a problem with what they were doing before at Twitter.
You didn't? That there was no place that, to me, there's such a fundamental difference, because they weren't just doing what Elon's doing now. They were kicking off people with different opinions about a vast range of subjects.
I just see that, like right now it's a nice sweet spot for Elon, but like when the next controversial thing comes about where Elon is maybe he's on the wrong side of history over the next 10 years, it's up to him what to censor and what not to censor.
I never held the position even before that that Twitter, the platforms, were not allowed to do what they were doing, or should have been regulated in any way to prevent them from doing it. So I'm consistent in saying Twitter had the right when it was Jack's company or before to decide who they want off. I just thought the lens by which, or the standard by which they made those decisions was so disturbing and wrong, because it was about like choosing specific narratives. Now it's about more like behavior. And I think if you're using behavior as opposed to like a specific narrative, like I think you'll get banned whether you're left-wing, right-wing, communist, whatever your political affiliation, religious affiliation. If you say certain things that are, past a certain etiquette or threshold, like a direct threat, I'm going to kill you and your family, or such and such races. Look, I get it. There's always a blurry line. But I think for the most part, it's pretty permissive. These guys just push the permissive to the absolute limit. And I think no matter, even on Rumble, I'm sure there's community guidelines of things you cannot do.
Yeah.
Like,
I guess I just don't, I'm not as I don't trust Elon Musk as much as most people do at this point.
And I guess
a lot of people do.
I'm biased. I just don't feel bad for any of these kind of scumbags who are just gross.
I
don't feel bad. In principle, is it better to leave them on? I guess it's because sunlight's the best disinfectant. But I've also been like, at a certain point, after seeing some of the behavior over the last year, maybe I've been swayed to say not everything is engaging or worth engaging.
Yeah.
Just because
there is the argument also that there's a lot of young people who cannot handle that kind of information coming at them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can't see it and discern what's a good idea and a bad idea. So maybe we're all better off if it's just not visible.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I was a little surprised to see it happening to these accounts, given what Elon was setting out to do with Twitter. But I also understood Sam Harris's thing. Like, is this good when you go on Twitter now and you start seeing kids being beaten in the street and all this disgusting content and racism, overt racism, proud anti-Semitism? Is this an improvement? Is this progress?
Right.
And I'm like, interesting point.
Yeah.
And remember John Stossel? I watch fight videos of raccoons killing children. And I do this. In other words, like, there's free speech often gets conflated. Free speech, you're shutting down free speech. Like Daily Wire fires Candace. You're shutting down free speech. It's like, no, you're not. Like Daily Wire is exercising free speech, firing Candace, and Candace is exercising free speech, like criticizing them. They both are doing it. It cuts both ways.
She's pregnant.
Yeah. It's Ben's.
Is that new?
Yes. She said it on her show.
What an odd-looking baby that would be.
What if it was Jewish? That'd be crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish her the best.
Shatova.
Well, we were worried about her marriage. I guess it's doing just fine.
I wasn't worried. Were you?
Yeah. Didn't her husband put out her husband's family put out a statement? Her
father-in-law put out some statement, but like people took the bait on that and said, and she was, savvy enough to say, luckily in my family we have respectful disagreements, and that makes it healthy. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Anything else to cover, Michael? Was there anything else?
I do have a movie recommendation.
Yeah.
Man, if you just have discovered me in the last 6 months, you probably have a very different impression of me than I really am. But there's a movie called The Apprentice. It's a movie about Trump. It's like a live action movie. It's not a documentary about Trump and his lawyer Roy Cohn. You know about this guy Roy Cohn?
Or Roger? No, not the Roger.
Roger Stone.
Is that the scene you sent me? The scene you sent me?
Yeah. So this guy Sebastian Stan, he's a cool actor. I think he might be in some Marvel movies.
Okay.
He was in that movie Kings or something on NBC a long time ago.
The show.
The show, yeah. Anyway, he does this. He plays a young Trump meeting sort of his father figure mentor, this devilish, awful person named Roy Cohn, who was the best, most aggressive lawyer in New York City. He basically taught Donald Trump how to operate.
Okay.
And it's about their relationship, but he does this Donald Trump impression for a 2-hour movie, and it's very interesting because it's not Shane Gillis.
Mm-hmm.
But he really captures something about him, and especially a young Donald Trump who's not sure of himself, and then it evolves into an older Donald Trump who's more of a character. It's really cool. It's a really worthwhile movie. It's $5 to rent now.
I think that's probably a smart decision if you're trying to make a serious movie about it. But it's all the problem with a movie like that. That's I maybe could check it out. But when I saw the scene you sent me, I'm like, real Trump is so overpowering whatever is happening here that it's hard to be introspective and reflective about Trump when Trump himself is so in the culture.
Well, he gets a right. Yeah. Right. I guess, it didn't do so well. So I don't think the timing was right for it, but he gets to a a very sort of core basic, element of Trump in the way that he talks. That I just thought you'd find interesting.
It just reminds me as an approach for a movie of when they made the Elton John biopic, and I'm like, Elton John, the story, and I'm like, isn't Elton John on tour right now?
Right.
It's one thing to do it for Queen and Freddie Mercury or Ray, who's gone, and then you get to look back. But it's hard for my brain to compute when I'm watching this scene. I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch a Trump press conference right now, off of this. But I get what you're saying, because when I watch it, I'm like, he's not doing an impression of Trump. He's embodying an essence of a part of Trump's identity that was once forming. I can tell that he's doing that.
And when
he's careful not to do it. He's careful.
And
not
when
to do
he
it.
does the Trump thing, you're like, oh, I could see how he's just a human being who just talks like this and thinks like this. It's an interesting character study because I think it helps you understand how he got to be the way he is.
But is it a caricature of a movie, or do they really get to is it favorable? Is it interesting?
I think it's very fair. I think they show him being a very caring, kind, considerate person, and they show him being a very cruel person, and then they just show him like being a 29-year-old who has a tower with his name on it in the city, who's much more successful than his father, and then decides to go build casinos and kind of like stretches himself too thin and like and like becomes this like thing that he wasn't always, but he became this thing. He wasn't always this way, and it kind of charts that, and it's cool. I liked it. The Apprentice.
The Apprentice. Yeah. Okay.
Bad name. Very bad name.
Yeah, You're Fired. It's after the show, isn't it? Did you know that?
Yeah, but it's not about this reality show at all.
Right.
I mean, I get because he was Roy Cohn's apprentice. I get it, but it's very confusing because if you
does Trump ever talk about Roy Cohn these days? Does he ever mention
Roy Cohn died of AIDS, which I think
gay?
He was gay.
Yeah,
which I think was, at least in the movie, they like Trump wanted nothing to do with that. So the way they depict it in the movie is he sort of took Roy Cohn's personality a little bit as his own and never credited Roy Cohn with it.
I want nothing to do with AIDS. AIDS should stay far away. I want no foreign aid.
Can you catch it? We don't know.
I don't want foreign AIDS. That's when you give money and you get the disease. It's terrible. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
we'll
that's
check
all
it out.
I got. What you got?
Yeah, I saw the scene you sent me. There's always something about these movies that sometimes has a flavor of, come on, Donald, everybody's doing it. You could be president one day. I'm like, did they talk like that?
Yeah.
Or is it a little more like sometimes they're expositioning instead of talking? Like they're showing you a conversation to tell the audience something as opposed to like just having a conversation and letting us do the work.
Well, that was just one scene. I mean, the way the movie got me is YouTube showed me a scene from it. Yeah. And then did you ever do that? And you go through a whole movie basically just watching the scenes on YouTube?
Yes.
And I was like, oh, every scene is great. I should just watch the movie.
I've done it a lot.
The Big Short also, they got me with that recently.
You watched that in parts, The Big Short?
I've seen it, and then I found myself watching the whole movie just through YouTube scenes again.
You realize how good or bad a writing is of a movie by those little things. You're like, man, this little snippet is just
it's helped me actually in a script I'm writing now of just remembering outside of all the big sophisticated things. Like it's just about writing awesome scene after awesome scene.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
Where's my money, Mike? I want my money back. Mike, how much have you leveraged? Mike, give me back my money. He's like, you don't want your money back. It's about to, once the defaults come in, the premiums will pay off. It's all.
Why would I do that?
Why would I do that? Now that was a little bit forced, but it was good. It was like you could, and you know how stupid they're being and how smart Mike is in retrospect.
Yeah.
But it's like I couldn't unsee Christian Bale in that scene, but I know exactly what you're talking about with The Big Short, where it's that scene, right? Give me where's my money, Mike? Give me my money back.
And then the one guy is standing and yelling.
$500 million. Jesus, Mike. Did I send you that thing where it's like somebody walking down the hallway where the general finally pays attention to the crisis? He's like, not now, damn it. Walking. He's like, sir, there's an avalanche coming. Not now. Okay, what? My God, send it to the president. Like you didn't see that TikTok where some guy acts out when the general finally pays attention to the emergency. And he says, but sir, and he just keeps walking down this hallway. But sir, not now, damn it. Sir, what? Send it to the president.
Have you been seeing a lot of like college humor type sketches getting a lot of popularity now?
Oh, like actual college humor?
No, not actual, but like the type of thing that was funny in like 2008, like I don't know how else to explain it, but like these like a little bit longer, very minute little social interaction type of things, or like cliches from movies that are blown up.
Yes,
I've been seeing a lot of those questions. Yeah,
like little meme videos where I do like our family stuff, wife stuff, but also like. When you're the friend who's the this at the party, and then it's like old. I've definitely been seeing that. I don't know why.
Like that one you sent me about the liberals coming to get a straight white male to help them get the other straight white males back, and he's like chopping wood, And they're like, he's like, wait,
yes.
He's like, wait a second. I thought you told me not to talk anymore. She's like, no, we need you back. We need a podcast with you.
I sent you one also. Yeah.
But that was very like, I thought that was very college humor.
What else did I send you? And you were like, it was like perfect. I sent you something that I knew it was right up your alley. It was another one. You said you watched it and you wrote phenomenal, but I forgot what it was.
I think that was the one. Phenomenal. I see it right here. That was the one where the guy was maybe not.
All right, everyone. Hey, welcome to episode.
It was the ad. Did you watch that? The ad.
The ad for what?
The studio, where he said he had this girl on who he bullied in high school.
All right, everyone. Hey, welcome.
Oh, you know, I responded to that, and that's not. I didn't even watch it.
We don't have to waste time now. You should watch that one and let me know what you think.
It was good.
Yeah, you should see.
We'll put it in the show notes.
It's something you would have written, but you got to see it.
Okay.
And then you wrote phenomenal.
Why did I write that? I think I meant it for the wood chopping one.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, this is what Michael and I do in between episodes: send each other memes. This is how I build, repair relationships with your spouse or friends by sending them memes of things that you need to work on.
This is how you keep me on the hook. You're like, if you don't keep doing this podcast, you're not going to get those memes. You're not going to get those videos anymore.
Gotta love
Where are you
those
going to see your videos?
All right. Well, we got some cool episodes coming up for all of those watching.
And we got some really cool ones. It's Women's Appreciation Month coming up on Ami's house.
Yeah, some female guests that are worth watching. Stay tuned for that. And thank you to our patrons. Thank you to our patrons and those on Patreon. We're going to be feeding you some good content soon. This one will be up in full on the page, but some special clips and bonus footage coming to bonus content coming to Patreon. And here's to a good 2025, Michael, kicking things off.
Clink.
Sponsored by, I wish, Clink.
Yeah, one day.
All right, everybody.
All right.
That's
Thanks for listening.